Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban. I'm a certified executive coach, and I help driven, experienced, emerging, and evolving leaders remove career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. I am thrilled today to talk about one of the most important parts of anyone's professional journey, and that is mentorship. Either receiving mentoring or giving mentoring is probably one of the most rewarding and biggest return on investment anyone can make in their career growth to elevate your career, access more opportunities, and really make a difference how you stand out and your presence, your brand, and grow based on where you want to go strategically. Now, if none of you have ever seen my smiling face before, you can find more about me at coachyurban.com. But most importantly, let's talk about mentorship. Very excited to have Brian Brogen join us today to discuss how mentorship, receiving mentoring, and giving mentoring makes all the difference when it comes to having that career elevation edge that you need to stand out as a professional. Whether you're already a leader or considering moving into being an emerging leader, moving into leadership, this is so important. In fact, the biggest and most wonderful thing that ever happened to me in my career was receiving mentoring. But let's talk about Brian, because Brian's super awesome. I'm really excited to have him on the show. In fact, Brian is certified coach, trainer, and speaker, and he is trainer and speaker from the John Maxwell team originally. So whoop, whoop, John Maxwell, shout out. He's also the host of the Build Your Success podcast, and he enjoys adding value to his family. Yes, family number one, team members, and the industry. He is a certified project management professional and also the author of the 100-Hour Pilot, which was fulfilling a lifelong dream for him. Without further ado, let's welcome Brian to the show. Brian, yay!
Hey, Aaron, how you doing today?
I'm great. Great to have you on the show, Brian. Talk about mentorship, receiving that wonderful insights, giving these wonderful insights, and how rewarding that is for your journey. Now, I know I shared a little bit about how mentoring made all the difference for me, because after my big pivot point where I was told you're actually not the person you think you are as a project manager, you're actually really a pain in the butt to get along with, I was, a little unhappy, to say the least. And my mentor stepped in and actually put me in his leadership program, which was a John Maxwell based program as well. It made all the difference for me, opened up my eyes as to what I could truly accomplish and what leadership actually was. It wasn't what I thought it was. So tell me a little bit about your story and mentoring. And you mentioned that it made all the difference for you. What is that story for you?
I didn't even realize what it was when it first happened in my career. So one of my early construction experiences was I was a gopher. Do you know what a gopher is, Aaron?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so for the listeners, yes, exactly. Go for this and go for that. I graduated high school, and I barely did that, by the way, at 17 years old. And so I couldn't work in the construction environment yet, but I was hired by a construction company. I tell everyone I was looking for a job, and I found a very rewarding career. And as the gopher, they'd send me after tools. They'd send me to deliver stuff to job sites, all kind of different go for things, go for this and go for that. And one of the things that I did was to go to the supply house where we picked up our tools. And so then I become, an 18-year-old man. And I get on the job site and we need a tool. At this time, I'm not a supervisor. I'm a working hand. And I decide we needed that tool. I jumped in a company truck. I went and got the tool. I come back. We were working. I felt like we were all happy. The supervisor wasn't happy. Number one, he didn't know where I was. And number two, you're not supposed to do those type of things without consulting the supervisor. And so his immediate boss, we had to have a conversation, and he talked to me about it. He said, listen, Brian, he said, you're an aggressive person. He said, I love that about you. However, we have to harness that aggression. And I've used that countless times in my career now to tell people about, hey, being aggressive is a good thing, but we have to harness our aggression So that's an early story about a mentor in my life. And, when you introduced us, you talked about how we can make a difference. How great would it feel if you could make a difference in someone else's life and you could hear a story how you helped them? It's just wonderful. You also talked about roadblocks, and I think overcoming roadblocks, one of the things we get frustrated with in our careers is not knowing how to do something. And if you can come alongside someone and help them learn to do something, sometimes for you, it's simple. You've been doing it for 10 years. You're a master at it. But this person that's just starting out, it's like you were 10 years ago. And you have to come alongside them and help them understand these simple steps that lead to whatever you're trying to achieve. And so I tell you, and now that I've become a mentor, then I'm able to recognize those people that were mentoring me earlier in my career.
That's so amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. I love that. I was a gopher.
I absolutely was. That's where we started.
And that's wonderful. And you learn so much. Here's the thing. And I think my mother and I were talking last night, actually. And she says, I've always had this gift. And she goes, I didn't realize it was a gift at the time. She says, I would observe someone and go, well, I'm not doing that. And then she wouldn't. But we can learn so much from other people. It shortcuts our learning curve. It clears roadblocks. In fact, it clears roadblocks that might have been there, but actually are not there for you because you're paying attention to that either knowledge or that insight or what you're seeing in wisdom. So I'd love to do, Brian, is kind of walk our participants down the mentorship path, starting off with, I would like to have a mentor. A lot of people want to have a mentor because most people know that is really important to elevate your career. And connecting with mentors can sometimes be intimidating. So what would be the first piece of advice? If you're someone who's looking for a mentor, what would be that first thing? Is it a certain quality? Where would I look? What's that? What does that look like? Can you help shape that for our participants?
Yeah. So number one, always have the end in mind, as the book we read, and the other thing is referrals, recommendations, word of mouth. Find out from someone you can trust, because trust is a very important piece of a mentor relationship. And then interview them, have a conversation. You talked about with me having an interview with your guest beforehand, and it's the same thing with a mentor. Someone may be extremely talented in their field, but your personalities may conflict. And that's not going to be a good win-win relationship when personalities conflict. Hey, but there's someone else out there, so don't despair. But find someone that you connect well with, that you respond to, and be prepared. I mean, that's the number one thing, is what are you looking for in this relationship? And be honest with each other about how this relationship is going to go forward. Those are a few tips for that. I know you got more questions for me, so I'll stop there.
Oh, no, those are great tips. And I'd love to build on some of those tips, if you don't mind, Brian, because one of the things I feel people may think that, oh, well, I get a mentor, and I've had this happen to me occasionally as a coach, not very often, but I did when I first started out coaching, is, well, I can have a mentor, I can have a coach, and I'm cured. Like, that's it. That's a magic pill. Wave a magic wand. We're done. It doesn't work that way. It's a reciprocal relationship. It's a relationship you invest in, and you do work as much as the mentor. And honestly, the mentor isn't really doing work per se. That individual is making time for you. And time is a non-replenishable resource. So as the mentee, the person receiving that mentorship or the mentoring knowledge, it's a great idea to, number one, express what is the goal you have for that relationship. So when you reach out to someone, whether that's internal in your organization now or externally in a professional organization you're membership of or elsewhere, be very explicit about what that relationship is if you are entering in a formal mentoring relationship. Now, sometimes these are not formal relationships. They are informal, and someone that you just consider a pal, a buddy, or someone who invests knowledge and time in you is less formal. But if it's formal, make sure that, like you mentioned, Brian, start with the end in mind, right?
So true. And we talked about being prepared. So that's number one, is knowing what the end in mind, but also being prepared for the next session. Mm-hmm. Because a mentor wants you to follow through with the advice they've given you. If they're giving this precious commodity of time to you, whether you talked about the formal relationships and informal, whether they're paying you, you're paying them to be a mentor, or they're doing it on their own for free. Either way, they're investing their time in you, our most valuable resource. And so follow through with what they've suggested you should try. Maybe it doesn't work. That's not always the case. Everything doesn't work, but it's a trial and error. It's an iterative process. And try what they've suggested you do and come back with some feedback. Hey, I did this. Because then the mentor, if you have a session with a mentor in the next week or month or whatever your scheduled sessions are, that's the other thing, is to make sure you got a schedule. And you come back and they ask you, well, did you take this action? And you say no, you're going to start to deplete the trust in the relationship, the mentorship. So be prepared and take action and follow through and be a good listener. Whether you're the mentor or the mentee, you need to be listening to each other and understanding each other. That's very important.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that and bring that up, because I know earlier, before we started the show, we were talking about active listening and what a skill it truly is. And just try it. For those of you tuning in, give me a thumbs up or let me know the last time you tried active listening, if you've ever heard of that or tried it before, and let me know how hard you think it actually was for you. Because when you truly listen, past the pause, when someone is talking to you, let's say a spouse or a sister, brother, mom, friend, what have you, they're talking to you and they're maybe going through something they're a challenge they're having, right? And our instinct is to what, Brian? What do we want to do? We want to
respond.
We want to respond. We want to solve the problem, right? And we're just waiting for the pause long enough so we can solve the problem. If we calm down and just listen, truly engage with that person, listen past the pause. And if we know they're actually stopped talking, then we interject. That's fine. But sometimes people aren't done. If we just listen a little bit longer past that first pause, they may continue. Because, for example, people like myself, I actually do pause from time to time. And my mom and my husband both are like, I'm like, I wasn't done. I'm not done. Stop interrupting me. I'm still telling the story here. So listen past the pause. But let me know, for those of you tuning in, have you tried active listening and how much of a challenge was it for you? I'll also share with you, Brian, that lately I've experienced people on the other end who are either providing services or coaching to me and haven't listened to what I want. So if you're receiving advice and insights, it's important to listen. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. And if you're giving insights, you're coaching and mentoring others, it's important to listen. Like when you're sharing what your goals are, listen to those. You may not be the best fit for that insight, right?
That's so true. And Aaron, as you alluded to, sometimes the pause, and I'm guilty. So let's say this first of all. Brian has had to learn this, but sometimes the pause is some reflection. And studies show that 80 to 90% of our communication is body language, it's facial character, it's expressions. And if you'll pay attention to expressions, you may see the cue they're lifting their eyebrows and they're thinking. That's not the time, because they want to say something else and they're thinking how they're going to say it. But there's also the cue that they're giving you the floor. If they lean in and look to you and pause with their mouth closed, and you're realizing, okay, this is the opportunity. They want me to speak now. And you and I are podcast hosts. It's a great opportunity to practice the skill by interviewing others and hearing them out. So, man, that listening is so important. No matter what you're doing in life, whether it's mentorship or anything you're working on, listening is so important.
Absolutely. And I challenge anyone listening to this either now or later, just give it a go, give it a try. And here's your challenge. Listen to someone without interjecting your own mental chatter, because research has shown around about 20 to 30 seconds, this starts going. And either we're thinking about what we're going to say, or we're thinking about something completely different because we're not interested in the conversation. So really test yourself, so your challenge is see how long it is before that mental chatter starts to interject. And as Gail mentioned, she said, I have to actively concentrate on active listening.
Gail, I'm joining you with that one. We're on that together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Gail. So, we've gone over a little bit of the first steps. Okay, this is what we need to do. Prepare for mentoring. Some of the things we need to do: engage when we're receiving that mentoring from someone, being prepared, listening, these sorts of things. And of course, the trust factor. Now, one of the things that is true for most people as they evolve in their careers and their leadership is true leaders are those who start evolving other leaders, right? And one way to do that is through mentoring others. And I'll also share someone who has given mentoring and received mentoring, oftentimes who learn a lot being the mentor of someone else, so delivering that mentoring. And Brian, if someone was considering being a mentor, what is something they should keep in mind just from the very foundational steps?
Well, number one, be enthusiastic about it. Be excited that you're given this opportunity, that someone trusts you enough that they're asking you to mentor them. So be excited and be engaged is going to be one thing. The other thing is be non-judgmental. What works for me doesn't work for everyone else. And so as a mentor, I've got to guide someone to their success, not my success. And so I need to understand, back to, having the end in mind, what are we trying to accomplish here? And have the person you're mentoring define that well enough that that's what you're after. I'm not after what I can make of you. I'm after what I can help you become. Right.
I think you've touched on something, and I just jumped receive right there. What I did, I jumped right in before he was done. Did you see?
Come on with it. This is a conversation between the two of us.
See, that was not active listening. But I just was so excited about what you said, because one of the keys to a truly healthy mentoring-mentee relationship is being unbiased about how someone grows. So sometimes your best mentors aren't necessarily found within your organization. So keep that in mind. And it's also a good idea to maybe have more than one type of mentor. Would you agree, Brian?
Yes, absolutely. I think there are different stages and different chapters of life where you're going to have different mentors. You may have some lifelong mentors, people that their character's good, you like them, you want to excel to do like they do and be something they are. But you're also going to have what I call moment mentors. We might find that in a post, a social media LinkedIn post where someone's wow, I love that. And that's a moment mentor, or just a space of time to help you through whatever it is you're working on currently. And so, yes, definitely a diversity of mentors is a great thing, because you have different things you need help with and different things that people have expertise in.
That's right. There's different types of mentoring. I mean, I think some people feel like mentoring needs to be this big thing. What I'd love to do is I would love to share with you that mentoring does not have to be this grandiose production, right? Let's lower the significance and the stress of perhaps engaging with this mentorship relationship as a mentee or a mentor, and understand there's different types of mentoring. Some, as you mentioned, Brian, lifelong or for long periods of time. These are individuals you truly admire and aspire to be. They inspire you and motivate you to be the best version of yourself, either professionally or personally, ideally both. Then there's other people like the moment mentors, what I call your transitional mentoring. So maybe it's a skill that you need to learn. It's something specific. I need to be a better speaker. I want to get mentoring on podcasts, right? Or I want to get mentoring on leadership skills specifically, or there's a specific part of the type of work that I do I want to be more adept at. There's all different types of mentoring that do not require some sort of production. Now, what are some of these types that you've seen, Brian, that you feel like kind of resonate with what I'm talking about here?
Well, the mentors, you work in the Elevates Your Career. And I think sometimes we talked about these diversities of mentors. Sometimes we think of an elder and a younger.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not always the case, especially in this new world we live in where people are transitioning jobs very frequently. There's times where a younger person has more experience in this arena than the elder person does, the aged person does.
Mm-hmm.
And as you transition careers at middle-aged, you may have a millennial teach you how to do what you're doing, and they know how to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
And so be open-minded to that, to understand that there's a diversity of the type of mentoring and the diversity of relationships. And I don't think I answered your question, but I did want to cover that while we were talking about diversity. So
No, that's great. I love you pointing that out, because it is important to understand that your mentor literally is an individual who's further down the road than you are in a certain area that you're focused on. It doesn't have to be life and my entire career. It can be something rather specific. It doesn't have to be all the things. It can be something rather specific. And then that person is a mentor in that area for you. I know other people my age, I won't share that, will learn from their children. Oh, I learned this about my phone, right? I learned that from my kid. So we can learn a lot from people younger than us, in fact. Let's
absolutely.
see. Gail just shared with me. She said, I have a mentor. I will tell him that he's my mentor. He says, no big deal, but it is. And it is for you, Gail, because this person is providing a lot of insights for you. And that may be a less formal relationship from his standpoint, that he's just sharing and giving with you and, collaborating with you. But for you, it is a big deal because you're getting so much knowledge from that. So we talked a little bit about this, and I want to further express and explore the mentoring part of it, mentoring others, because here's the thing, we love to receive, give me all the good stuff, but when it comes around to them maybe giving information, don't you think that our inner critic stands in our way sometimes, Brian? Who are we, right?
100% it does. Yeah. I struggle with that. What can I offer someone? But then when you see the light go off in someone you're helping's eyes and realize I am truly helping this person.
Mm-hmm.
And something you alluded to earlier, one of the things I get mentored by is by books and reading and understanding and learning from books. And I read something one time, there's a Latin proverb that says, by teaching, we learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a win-win proposition. As you are mentoring someone, you're learning. You may be learning some soft skills that you need. And I like to call them foundational skills because I'm a construction guy. But when you help others and when you speak to others and when you learn to speak to them in their language so they hear and understand you, then you're growing yourself. And then you can, and it compounds, it multiplies. So after you get the bug, now you want to help so many people and grow that. And it's just, for me, it's been life-changing to be mentored by people and to be mentored by others. And I like to call it a human chain to where I'm being mentored by someone and someone's mentoring me, or excuse me, I'm mentoring someone else. And so that way we're growing together. And they say a rising tide lifts all ships. And I think that's where we need to go, is to help each other. And, our society can use a lot of help today.
Absolutely. And I think of more connection and realizing, you mentioned that bug earlier, once you get the bug, and I'll share with you a little bit of what the bug is. So when you get that feeling, when you see that the knowledge you've given someone, the insights you've given someone has truly made a difference in their lives, there is a feeling quite like that. It truly lifts your spirits. It shines out of you. You just feel like you're walking on cloud 9 because you've truly made a difference in someone else's life. There really isn't another feeling like that. And one of the reasons why people like to volunteer once they start getting into that. Now, for those of you who are feeling like, well, I don't know if I would be a good mentor or not. Maybe I don't have the patience, maybe I don't have the knowledge, whatever. I will share with you again. A good mentor is someone who's just a little bit further down the road in a particular area that someone wants to grow in. It doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to be the VP of such and such, or the director of so-and-so, or the C-suite personality. That's not required to be a great mentor to someone. And I know for a fact that one of my mentors, who meant so much to me in my early career. It made a lot of difference, so much so I actually put him in my book and contributed my success in part to him because of the coaching and guidance that he provided me at a very important moment in my career. I know that with talking to him, I didn't tell him I was putting him in the book, by the way. It's a total surprise. He had to find it out. And once he realized it, he was like, oh my gosh, this means so much. Like, one of the things he said to me is like, it never ceases to amaze me how something, at the time, it seemed like such a straightforward engagement, like this is what I should do, has made such a difference. And him being able to share in that means so much to him. And I'm sure that, Brian, you've experienced something similar to that in your mentoring with others.
Without a doubt I have. And Aaron, you were at a point, and we'll call it a fork in the road with that mentor, is what I'm hearing. And we have many forks in our life, many choices. You go left or go right. Sometimes those are inconsequential decisions. Hey, I can have McDonald's today or Burger King. That's not a big deal. But there are other things in life. And I heard a speaker one time talk about how he got here. And he showed it, kind of chronologically said how he got to where he was at. And I thought about the successes I've had. And mentors are at most of those forks in the road. Most of the decisions that were big decisions, life-changing transitions, there was a mentor that guided me on the right course.
That's absolutely correct. And for those of us who know the power of this engagement, this collaboration, if you find yourself at that moment where you know that change is coming or needs to happen, I encourage you to reach out to someone to help guide you through that. Someone who is further, as I mentioned before, further down the road in that area you are considering evolving into, because it's much better to learn from other people than have to, well, let me try this out. Then 10 years later, wake up and go, oh, well, that was a temporary position the last 10 years. It's not what I wanted to do. So it's better to find out things from other people before we start investing time or resources and that sort of thing. And also helps us grow more effectively and efficiently. And it might surprise you, I'm a coach. I have a coach. And my coach and I are working together to make sure that I'm evolving effectively and efficiently in my business based on my zone of genius. And for those of you out there who are thinking about evolving and elevating your careers, first of all, what's your zone of genius? Where do you want to evolve? And let me know in the chat, where do you want to grow? What is the thing you would love to have mentoring on today? I would love to see what your answers are. So, Brian, what other top tips do you have to share with us about mentoring? Because I know there's some things I haven't covered yet.
Well, Coach Aaron, I love to hear that you have a coach, because I read the book, Minute Motivators for Leaders. And in it, Stanley Toller says, every leader should be a mentor, but more importantly, every leader should have a mentor. And so I think what you said there about having a coach and being a coach, we all need help. I mean, nobody's got this figured out. We all need to have some steps in life that help us to grow and define where we're going. And I just think that mentorship can help both you and the person, and it's a win-win. We've made that case a couple times during the podcast. In the world we live in, I wouldn't know Coach Aaron if it wasn't for LinkedIn. And there's so much opportunity to meet valuable connections and grow yourself. You and I were talking about having encyclopedias when we were kids and having to look things up. So today you have the convenience of Google it, but you also have the convenience of meeting some world-class individuals and creating relationships with them. Not just having, a plethora of connections so you can say, hey, I've got 10,000 connections, but you can build some real relationships and quality people, and use this tool that you have in front of you to grow and to network.
Yes, absolutely. And that brings me to a really good point. Like, how in these, in our very still COVID challenge times, although we're transitioning through and out of the socioeconomic challenge that we're currently in, we still will continue with a vast amount of remote work, a vast amount of people staying at home, working remotely, more isolation, not necessarily connected to workplaces as we enjoyed earlier, prior to the pandemic. So with that being kept in mind, how in the heck are you supposed to find a mentor and connect with them? So here's the thing. You mentioned leveraging LinkedIn, using that network. It's fine to say, oh, I've got 10,000 connections, look at me. But what are you doing with those connections? Are you reaching out to people to get to know them? And there's a host of different tools out there that allows you to connect with people. So one of those is Zoom. Set up a Zoom coffee chat. There's another provider, I think it's called Lunch Club. Now that was a little bit more interesting. You're not guaranteed that you're going to meet this amazing connection, but some people have reported meeting their next best friend. So, it's interesting world out there as we explore and evolve in the virtual workplace, in the virtual, digital life, how we can leverage these tools to find people that we would have never received mentoring from historically. It's a much bigger world now.
So true. And you have to be intentional. You talked about not just gaining connections. Hey, that's easy to do. But when I get a new connection, I send them a message. I mean, it takes a few minutes of my time, but I send each and every connection a message because I'm glad to connect with them and I hope I can support them. And that's the message I send is great to connect with you. Hopefully I can support you and we can grow together. And that's where I think, in this remote working environment, we've got our introverts and our extroverts. That doesn't change about human beings, but especially our extroverts, they kind of gravitate to working remotely. Mm-hmm. Introverts, I'm sorry, the introverts, they gravitate to working remotely and they have to be super intentional about reaching out. Like you and I, we want to meet the next person. We want to find that next best friend, but not everybody's that way. And so they have to be intentional about outreach and be intentional. Hey, schedule time to go and find new people and new mentors and people that will help you grow yourself.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I forget where I was reading this, but sociologists call this phenomenon the power of loose ties. So your broader network, those people who don't know you as best friends, for example, but know of you and know who you are those people who will help be the catalyst to elevate your career and your life. And by continually and intentionally investing time in this broader network, based on your strategic journey, of course, that allows you to evolve and accelerate your career much more quickly versus just, well, I hope somebody will notice what I'm doing. That doesn't work. We have to be the entrepreneurs of our career and be much more intentional about it. So for those of us who are not as comfortable hopping on like a chat like this, for example, and sharing our knowledge and smiling in front of everybody, we need to be a little bit more intentional and know this, you don't have to have 10,000 connections to make it valuable.
100% true. And hey, if that's you, take it in small bites, be intentional, but don't try to overwhelm yourself. I've talked to people that it stresses them out to be in a room of people. And they really go home stressed after they try to smile and shake hands and do that. For me, I'm energized by it. Mm-hmm. But in the same token, here on this platform and other platforms, social media, be intentional. And if you don't like it, then do a little bit of it. Just ease your way into it and make it easy for you to commit to.
Yes, and be strategic about it. Think about, like we were talking about earlier, when you're connecting with that ideal mentor, start with the end in mind. Same thing with your networking and finding a mentor to begin with. Consider strategically where you want to grow. And just like a good GPS unit, plot your way back to where you are now and understand, okay, who along this journey will help lift me up, will give me that hand, will give me that knowledge, give me those insights, and connect me to those people who will matter most for my evolution, elevation of my career, my life, what have you, wherever you want to go. And that's the thing. You may pass from one individual to the next, and that's a beautiful thing. And what's great about this is, for those of you who don't want to have 10,000 connections on your LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, that's fine. But leveraging your mentoring relationship also means you are connected to their connections. So you can leverage that to help you grow that broader network without investing a ton of time personally to do that from the foundational level organically.
Absolutely. And that question I asked you at the end of my podcast, who do you know that I need to know, is the same thing that these people need to do. And hey, if you have 30 quality connections that you're absorbing from and that you're connecting with and that you're having them influence you, more power to you. That's great. Hey, but be intentional about it and learn from others and say, if this person doesn't know, who do you know that does know? It's a great question.
That's right. That's right. And if you have that first, coffee chat with a potential mentor and you find they aren't a good fit, ask the question, who do you know that I should know? And then continue your search, because you may not always connect with just the right mentor the first time, and that's okay. And also, please, if there's nothing else you got out of our conversation today, just keep in mind that mentorship in general doesn't have to be a production, doesn't have to be a big deal. It can be very accessible and is accessible to all people and all walks of life. It is not something that is reserved for the select few. So please don't think you have to have a certain type of job, role, profession, title, or somewhere on the hierarchical chain to receive or give mentoring. That's not the case. Brian, do you have anything else to share with our guests and our participants before we close out? And by the way, if you do have any questions now or later, feel free to reach out. And we did have Matthew just actually shared with us here on LinkedIn. 300 first connections can lead to 250,000 second degree connections on LinkedIn. And by the way, Matthew knows what he's talking about because he is very detail oriented. Probably look that up. Thank you for sharing, Matthew.
The multiplication there, he just showed us an example of how that multiplicity just happens and occurs, right. and other people helping other people. So it's wonderful. Aaron, I just want to mention that I am having a workshop here in Florida. It's the Hear and Be Heard workshops in Lakeland, Florida. And if any of your guests want to find out more about that, they can go to buildcs.net and check out our events page. All the information is there for that. It's June the 18th. We're going to do some interactive workshop style things, participation amongst those participating, and have a great time. And hey, we're in the Central Florida. The West Coast beaches and the East Coast beaches are there for you to enjoy afterwards during the weekend. So check that out.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And Brian and I were talking about his workshop prior to the show, and it definitely sounds like a very interesting workshop. And it does have social distancing considerations built in. So don't feel like you haven't had your shot yet or what have you, you can still participate. And it's very, very engaging. So if you're a project manager or you're someone in the construction industry or otherwise, or just someone who wants to further your listing skills, I highly recommend that workshop. And also, just as a FYI, you'll see it scrolling around the bottom of your screen. You're watching this live. Career Coffee Chat is also Elevate Your Career, the Elevate Your Career Roadmap, which is a companion guide to my best-selling book, Elevate Your Career for More Impact and Income, is launching soon. So feel free to pre-order that. And of course, as always, if you're tuning in from one of our podcast channels, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, just give us a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe. We'd love to have you be a part of this career growth community and listening to further great conversations, although it's hard to top this one, Brian. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate having you on the show. It's been a deep pleasure. And for all of you out there, just know that mentorship is more accessible than you probably think. And you also have the ability to mentor others, which is extremely rewarding experience as well. And not only that, it gives you more professional presence when it comes to elevating your career. So for all of you, ta-ta for now and keep elevating.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Aaron Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.